Hello, and can you hear me? Good. Right. There's a Prezi that I've shared on the Facebook chat, but I'll drag this across because I'm not sure how well it'll come across. So this is kind of what we're going to be sort of looking at. More for us, it's what UV stands for. So obviously from a technical point of view, it's just describing a couple of axes, which is up and across. Cartesian coordinates were x, y. Were x, y, and z. So because of that, that's why they got to use the u and v. And there is actually w as well. It's not used as much these days, but if you use Studio Max, they often use UVW as the UV tool. And that sort of explains that. So you can go through that Prezi link if you want. A couple of things that we're going to have a look at is the types of projection. So if you're wanting to understand what UV mapping is, it's the things like making maps. Maps are pushed around a sphere or a cylinder, and we've been doing that for a long time. So if you want to get your head around it, just look at a globe in the library or something, and you'll start to get your head around it. Also, if you look at cube mapping, sort of like making a dice, you can see how you unfold a box. So packaging design, when you're making packaging, you're actually flattening out 3D shapes. So that's another way of looking at it. Labels for cans. So another way of looking at a UV map would be looking at how the label is put onto a bottle or a cylindrical object. And so what does it all mean? It's basically taking making a 3D shape into a 2D image. There's a nice sort of like example there of a character that's being completely unwrapped. And this brings me to what I wanted to talk to people about, because I know people have started doing some basic unwrapping. But if you're looking at the map that's been used for the face and the map that's been used for the body, you can see that there's very little space unused. So kind of everything is getting used. The other thing is as well, on certain characters, you can actually only have to create a map for one side. We're not going to do that today because we're going to create a map for both sides, but it is quite useful when you're doing that. So that's the presentation over and done with, nice and quick. And then we're into what we mean by that. So this is the finished product where we can see the axe that we've made, and we've got a UV texture in the background. You can use anything. You can use anything you want. You can use just a checker. But I find that the ones that have letters on do enable you to sort of get an idea of where your projections are, and sort of helps you a little bit. Now, I've left lots of space between the projections that we're using, so that can be seen quite easily. Everything's been unwrapped, so we're using the unwrap on the. Go into this one, just like this. You see that the shaft's been unwrapped. So there we've got the shaft unwrapped of the axe, and then the head's been unwrapped. There's the head, and that's got different types of wrapping on it as well. We've done some different types of wrapping. Okay, so just to come back to the model. So here's the model, and this is where we're at with sort of a base mesh. We've done a tidy up, so I've done some videos already just to sort of make sure that everybody's clear how you should start with your process, because I find a lot of models that we get don't have correct naming conventions, or they have lots of history on them, and they just generate lots of crap inside the engine. So Jordan, you need to mute your mic.
Sorry.
It's alright, just use the group chat if you want to talk. Okay, so simple shapes, all based out of the cylinder. So you can see that the cylinder is actually the UV map that's currently on screen, and we need to start doing some bits of housekeeping on this. So we're just going to first of all check that there's no UV sets. So this is something we're going to be using. This is a right mouse click over the object, and we can see that there's a default map, and the default map is effectively this map here. And this is the one that was created when the original cylinder was created. And we're going to, I've shown how to make these panels in the video, and I've explained a little bit about sort of like your world space and how you should be presenting that in the videos that are up on the channel that will be supporting this video, this stream. So we can jump straight in and just start unwrapping this now. So the main wrap that we want to do, a lot of people just do a default unwrap and then start piecing it all back together, but it's kind of a bit silly to do that. So if you zoom out a little bit in your UV texture editor, texture window, this one, you can see that we have a positive quadrant. This is where the UV map's going to sit, but you also have tons of space all around, and if you don't use that space, you are missing some easy ways of working, I think. So let's just have a look at some of the bits that we want to do. So I've had a look at this axe and thought to myself, right, where do I need to be concentrating on first? Hey, hi Adrian. One of the things that came up when I was looking at this, because we had a look at the, just bring up the source imagery. Let's get these up.
You what?
Ed, you might want to mute your mic. Okay, so looking at this, let's see if I can mute. Yeah, I can mute his mic. Okay, so looking at this this axe, what you can do is you can look at the areas that are going to be the biggest details, and obviously there's going to be a big detail on this axe blade. So whatever we do, we want to make sure that the axe's head has a lot of real estate on our UV screen. So I'm starting to think now as an artist, right, what I need to do is I need to probably give over 50% of the space that I'm going to use in my texture map to the axe's head. And the reason for this is the thing that's going to draw the eye of the people, of the players. This is going to be the thing that makes the players think, wow, that's a sharp or that's a menacing axe. They're not really going to be that bothered about the handle, so to speak. That's just an extra bonus if we can get some detail into that. So with that in mind, then we're going to start looking at this being the biggest part of what we do. So the biggest part of what we do is going to be looking at this is going to be a projection map from the z-axis, through the z-axis. I'm just going to select, now there's a few tools that I want you to get used to when you're selecting things. So obviously you've got your your pick selector, which you can right mouse click and pick. So that gets us into face mode, and you can see we're on active pick, so we've got lots of things going on. But I also like to use the brush select tool. The brush select tool is probably one of the most underused things I think that artists today have. So let's have a look at this. We're in our face selection mode. We use the B key to make it bigger or smaller. It's quite cool. And we can just basically paint the selection that we want. So it makes it quite easy. And the great thing is it paints it on a projection. So if I didn't want to select the other side, you can see there was only one that sort of spilled over, or two spilled over there. So that was quite cool, and that can be quite active. Now, you have to remember, and for those of you that are new to Maya, those that go back way back in time with Maya will know that when we used to go into selection mode with Maya, we used to see the internal faces. I'm just going to see if I can find it, because it's there they are. So this is what it used to look like. So when we used to go into, this is a bit of a retro thing. So when we used to go in, I can see Adie's nodding at me. This is what you had to pick. So this is what Maya is using. So if I get my brush too small and I'm selecting on this outside edge here, it only picks the face once it hits that center point. It's just a little throwback to how we used to work. Anyway, so we don't want to have that on. That's just probably causing people some heebie-jeebies right now. So we'll just get those off, and you can just continue to paint those in. Nice and fast way of working. So you've got to remember that when we're working in when we're working with art or art assets, we want to be working as fast as we can and as accurately as we can. So there's the axe head. Okay, I'm not going to go into creating selection sets or anything like that. It's just too small an object. If we were working on an object, say like the M16 that Jordan initially wanted to do, that would be a good example of using lots of different selection sets and creating different selection sets for it. But this is just a simple object. So we've got our selection made. Now we're going to go in and choose a projection type. So I'm going to use a planar projection. Now, although I've put it onto my shelf, I always do like to just double check it. So come in here, have a look at the planar projection. We might as well hit this from the start. So there's the Z-axis. But what if we do hit the X-axis? One of the things as well that I find a lot of artists are doing is they make a mistake and they don't backtrack through the mistake. So with that in mind, let's apply this over the X-axis. So we've clearly made it the wrong way. As you can see, it's on the wrong plane. So what do? Well, we can actually go into the attribute editor and make a few changes and a few adjustments. So if you look at the rotate on this, it's rotating around 90 degrees. So to change that, I've already changed the projection to actually suit what I wanted it to do. So it is something that you can do. It is something that can be done. Now, the other thing is, when you're in this projection, it's a good idea to actually rename the projection. So we could call this axe head. And I always like to put something on so it tells us what it is. So it's axe head projection. And then we can start to look at using the gimbal tools to scale up how the axe head is going to work. So this is giving us a representation. This square is a representation of the plus and minus aspect of your UV editor. So it's pretty cool that we can see that as an artist as we're working. Now, I've got a few things turned on in here, so I'm going to start to explain some of these buttons in here so that you get an idea of why yours probably won't look the same as what we're doing here. But you can soon make it look like that. Okay, so now I've got this selection set done. This has welded everything together in a selection set. So we can come into the UV menu system, and we can move the shell tool. So I'm going to click on the shell tools, and because we made this as a selection, we can actually drag and move that out. It's not connected to anything else anymore because we've made a whole new projection, and we can drag and select it out. I can actually see that we've probably missed one actually in there. So I'm just going to go back a couple of steps just to have a look. There it is. I've missed a UV, and I could tell that because it was not the same color as all the other UVs. So if you're wondering how did he know, yeah, it was. You can see there's a color difference. If I zoom in, there's a color difference there between these two colors. One is showing me a true projection and the other is showing a back face and a true projection over the top of each other, which creates purplish colour. So we're just going to back up a couple of steps just to get projection mode, and I'll just make sure I've got that one selected. Now, I'm going to actually use the right projection this time. I don't want to go back through all the other stuff, so I'm going to go into the planar mapping, make sure it's on the Z connection, and hit the project. So you can see that that projection's been done properly. I can either scale it inside here, which will show the scales going up and down, scale it up and down in here. Two different sides though, but remember the projection only does one thing, and anything I do to this inside here is going to be beyond the scope of this. So you've got to think of it as sort of stacks. So this is the top of the stack. So anything I do inside here will be under this stack. So that's why the projection will still sit there when I pick this object and I move this object out like this. Just show you that. So UV sets. Now there's the poly projection. It's still in the right place because obviously the projection was done in the right place. So let's just rename this projection. So that's the axe head proj. Okay, so now when I go into the right mouse click to those UV sets, you can see that there's axe head projection. So we're just making some simple. Yeah, Jordan, I will get to that, how we change the colour on the UV map in a second, but we're just making some simple adjustments there of making our lives easier as artists and making another artist who would get our object their lives easier as well. So let's go into the UV editor because Jordan's asked a question. So the blue and the red and the purple, well, this is all coming from using the shaded UV display. So if you turn this on and off, you can see that the UV display in here turns on and off in different colours. Now, when it's blue, it means that the faces are pointing towards you. When it's red, it means the faces are pointing away from you. So anything that I put, if I put some text onto this, and we're just going to do this now, we're going to create a whole new shader here. So let's go into right mouse click over the object, add a favourite material, Lambert. I'm going to call this the check pattern. Now, I've added a link in the Facebook group to the image that I'm using. Wouldn't want you to think it's my own, but this is the image that I'm using. I like it because it helps me to do 0, 0 to 1 sort of thing, so it sort of sits there. So what we mean when we say this is the right way or wrong way around. So the letters on this projection are correct, but the letters on this projection are incorrect. They're flipped over, and that's because the projection is coming from behind the object, if that makes any sense. So we need to separate this shell out. We need to split it out, because if we're going to use any writing on this axe, let's say we're going to give the axe a name, Thunder or something, the writing would be flipped on the opposite side. So how are we going to do this? Well, a couple of ways you can do this. You could do a reprojection, but that would be silly because we want to match any artwork we do pretty much in Photoshop. We want to just flip it over and it's only the text that's going to change. So again, what I would do is go into the face mode, select the brush tool, paint select out the ones that I know are correct. So I know these are correct because they've got the right letters on them. And this is another reason why you might want to not use just a standard checker pattern, so that you can actually get a good idea of seeing what's going on. Okay, so that's in there. A couple of them have been selected, so I'm just going to deselect those. So doing that by holding down Control, so I can just deselect those quite easily. Okay, so if I move these, I'm probably going to have things attached to them. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go Polygons, and I'm just going to go Cut UV Edges. There we go. So that's been cut. And we can then go back through, and we can move that out. You see that they're connected still, look. So now we can go in, and we can go through and select those again. This is where a selection set does come in quite handy, because obviously you can put polygons into connection sets, into selection sets, and then you can just click a button and it will select those polygons every time for you. Just go through there. Let's make sure we didn't get anything. Just one this time. Now I can move this out, and you will see that the blade shape is the right shape. This one is flipped over. It's red. So we've got blue, we've got red. It's like a Klingon warbird or something. So I'm going to select this shell, and I'm going to come up to my tools up here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip this across in the U direction. So I've now got the correct letters on this side, and I've got the correct letters on this side. So that's pretty cool. I've sorted out my main problem. I'm just going to select this shell again. And I'm also going to start thinking about my space. So I want to keep them the same size. And I want to get them sort of matched up. But I think that's a pretty good sort of shape to take the best sort of advantage of our object. Now, because we cut this one off, this one now needs welding back together. So easiest thing to do is to select all the edges inside here. So we're going to edge select. Sorry, we'll do UV select in here, and then we'll hold down the control button and the right mouse button, and we'll make them go to edges. And what you'll see is that all the other edges are selected that they're connected to. So we can just hold down the control key and just deselect those edges. Just deselect those edges. Deselecting. Did last night, not today. Okay. Let's do it this way then. Deselected. Okay, so what we've got is we've got edges inside here, and it's doing selections. Ah, that's why. Try that again. So when you're in component, so move shell mode, it was trying to move the shell. The shell was actually the actual face itself. So this should now work. So we can do this. We select all those edges, and then we deselect the edges that they're connected to. And you can see it's the internals that need. These are all the internals that need welding. There's even one that's been moved slightly. So I'm going to go in here, and we're going to find one of these. It's one of these buttons down here, and sew the UV edges. There they go. So they've been sewn back together. So we should now be able to select the whole shell, if we can. So that's something for you to check on your models. It does get missed, and then obviously it makes UV mapping a real pain because things aren't connected together. If that makes any sense. Any questions so far? People will need to type because we've got you all muted. Moving on then. So this is now taking care of the axe blade. Let's have a look at a couple of things that we know are definitely going to be easy ones. The top and bottom, they're definitely going to be easy. So I can just quickly grab those. Just select those faces. There we go. These are dead easy ones, these. These are going to be projected quite simply. How did I split the axe in the first? My texture isn't working at first, it is now. So I missed how to split the axe head on the editor. So the axe head was done through a planar projection, Jordan. So we used a planar projection in Z, and then we selected the side, one side of the projection, and then we went into polygons and we split the UVs out. And that's why, because we split the UVs out, that's why we had to then sew them back together. So whenever you do a split, you have to sew. Okay. So projection for this one would be a projection, again, we'll do a planar one, this one would be in the y-axis. So there's the y-axis projection, I'm just going to move that out. And we could probably call that one axe. This would be handle pop dodge. So that's given us another projection. We're going to delete all these projections at the end, but it just gives you an idea. Now you'll notice that the letters are different sizes. So this is, the smaller the letters, the more detail that we're getting in there. So we need to get this up to somewhere near to where it's probably going to be, just something like that. And this can probably sit within or where the axe is going to go. So we can pop that one in that one. We've got one on this side. So these, you can see how they're stretched, so we're going to need to reproject those. Now, one of the best projection tools that I like is the best plane projection tool. So that will try and project as best it can. So it's projected across the plane, but what we need to do then is we need to actually modify. Let's go in here, let's go to the projection, best plane one on. So that's worked out. So I turned it on by pressing that, and then when I went and did a planar projection, it automatically used it. So if I just move this to the side, you can see it's flipped over, so the letters are all back to front. But the letters are, you can read them, so I'll just flip that over. And I'm going to scale that down. Scaling tools are the same scaling tools that everybody use for everything. So I'm trying to get that to the same sort of size. Something like, should be something like that. This is a very small part we've got in there. And then the last bit. Now the last bit is probably the trickiest bit, because this is the bit where we're going to actually take the rest of the shaft. So I see a lot of people that go in and start selecting all these bits, but ultimately all you have to do is select the thing in here, because that's the only bit left to select. So this is our selection, so I don't see why people would go then selecting it. Again, it's probably more about how you would think as an artist there, rather than how we would just do it as a process. Yes, the right process would be to select it with a brush and everything else, but why would you when you can do it there? Okay, there will be sort of like an issue down at the bottom. We will look at that as we get to this. So I'm going to use the cylindrical mapping tool. There it is, and it gives us a beautiful sort of picture as it comes out. Now I'm going to use one of these unfolding tools, because it works quite well, especially when you've got these awkward shapes. But just to show you what's sort of happening, you've got this. This is the selection handle, so it's doing half of the selection. So we can sort of keep moving this around. You can see as we move it, the UV's sort of like projected through it. Okay, so if I use the mesh select, you can see I'm selecting the whole thing. And then if I press the unfold, it's going to try and unfold all this in sort of a very strange way. It's going to try and get the whole thing sort of unfolding in a very strange way. So what we have to do is create a seam first. So that the best thing to do, first of all, look at the handles. This is the axe handle. Again, this is why we need to actually name these things. And you can see that this no, it's not. That's the top one. Actually, that's the axe. Bottom. Fudge. And then there'll be another one in here. Handle top. So let's find the one that we want. The one that we want is called polycylinder projection. There it is. So we'll call that axe handle. Okay. So there, what we've got is we've got this projection, but this projection is it's not a complete projection. So we need to complete the projection, which sort of wraps it all up sort of nicely. We then need to look at some of these stray UVs. So this UV is down here. This is a stray one. This one needs to be brought back sort of into check. And we've got the different coloration going on as well. See, this helps us shadow it out so you can see it better. You can see that this coloration is happening. So it's connected all the way along. So what I did is I selected the edges there, because I had a bit of a play with it to sort of find the best way of doing this. So I've selected a full edge selection, and this is going to, I want you to imagine this is going to be a seam. Say it's how a shirt would be put together or something like that. We're just going to go into the cut UV edges again. Okay. Um, there is an auto seams, but I've not had a play with it. It's a new green button. Anything new and green, I have to have a bit of a play with first. But this is how I would have done it before. So I've created the cut, so those two faces are no longer connected. And then I went in and selected this set and did an unfold. So once you've done the unfold, I'm using hand gestures here, that's probably not the best way, but you've then got to stitch some bits together because there was lots of bits of it that was not stitched together properly. And they're all happening down here. Now the best way to find out which bits are not working properly is to just select Edge Component Mode, and you can find out which ones need connecting. And all you need to do is go select one of the edges. You need to be in selection mode. Select one of the edges, and it'll select both the edges that are going to be connected. And then you can actually hold down Shift and just sew those UVs together. It's nice and quick. It works quite well. And you can see that they get sewn together quite quickly. So everything else now is going to try and connect to something else down here. So you can see that everything else is now trying to connect to something else rather than it be the thing on there. So let's go down. Just make sure I'm just got an issue in there. I think no, they're not connected. Cool. So now I can select this again as a whole selection, and then just do the unwrap again. So the unfold now is almost, I'd say, perfect. But it took that little bit of extra work just to make sure that the bottom of the handle, which is this bit down here, okay, and you can see that the texture's sitting quite nicely on that now, was sorted. So I can now go in and sort of just tidy this up because my OCD is going to get in the way. I'm going to put this on its side, and we can start to build sort of what we want it to look like. So I'm just using these arrow tools to do 45-degree turns, and I'm going to use sort of like scaling tools to sort of bring. You can see we're going to get a nice texture across there. All those letters are really put together quite well. Got a little bit of a seam warp, maybe just across some of these, where some of these seams they are still straight. We could actually probably do a lattice selection on those. So if I select these, I can do a bit of a lattice selection on these, and this is all this is doing is helping some of these bits at the bottom follow flow lines a little bit better. So I'm just bringing those. So I'm just trying to keep these lines straight. So you see these lines in here. So I'm just going to sort of pull these lines out a little bit. Push them in. Push those in. There we go. So there we've got better line alignment and line alignment. That'll work quite well. Okay, so back to this. Going back into our selection mode, that shell mode, and I'm just going to move some of these things into place. So I want everything to sit more or less with one space between them for this. So selecting this one and this one. I'm using Shift to select these. Just bring these up. And now we're going to try and fit these together. A little bit of scale on it, I think. Now, I'm just going to get this so that these sort of fit in that window. Now, this one just needs a little bit of a nudge sort of back. And there we go. Now we have got a big piece of space up here. There's not enough left of the model to actually make any sense in that being used. I tried various different ways of rotating these, but I figured it would probably be better if we kept the textures aligned as much as we can. Now, if I was wanting to get absolutely perfect lines, just a couple of little things, there's a bit of extras, but if I wanted to get perfect lines, I could go into a component mode like this, and I can use the snap tool. This is kind of like in Word where or in an editing package where you align to center or things like that. So it's quite useful. You can sort of just nudge these together, and these make some great little extra tools just to flatten things out, because we know that this one's going to be sort of like flat down the shaft sort of thing. Go. and that's made, if we look at this, that's made those lines absolutely super spot on as we go around that. Okay, so um, that's the end of that broadcast, really. I'm going to just open up. Let's look. Open up for questions. Anybody got any questions that wants to take it further? This was just UV mapping, not texturing. So it was just a UV mapping thing. If anybody wants to turn the mics on, they can. People leaving. Cool. Oh, I think that pretty much covered it. Thanks, Jordan. All right. This was live, so it will be up on the channel. Obviously, uh, everybody else who's missed it will be able to go on it. I certainly think we probably could do another one of these to show how we'd go about texturing it. I don't know if Aidy's got anything to add, if he's still on. Um, Jordan, if you unmute Aidy, because I can't. Or not. I think it was a little pull-down box on his little icon that you'll have seen. Hmm. Maybe it's Aidy muted himself. Okay, well, I'm going to draw this to a close then because it's covered, pretty much covered. Done it in 40 minutes. I think it was pretty straightforward. Hope you can all use this now, and see you all at college.